Welcome back to the DemystifySci podcast. I'm Anastasia.
I'm Shiloh.
And this is the place where we search for the theories and ideas that are going to change the world. On a previous episode of this podcast, we talked to Brandon Quittem about Bitcoin and the future of money and the very nature of money. And in that podcast, we talked about the mechanics of how the network works, all of the things that make Bitcoin a potentially very useful way of storing monetary value. And we never really got to the big questions that are in the background, which is all of the objections and potential pitfalls of such a system. And so in this conversation, we talk about all of the loose questions that we have about what happens when Bitcoin goes awry, and if there are some kind of principles from the natural world that we can use to understand what a system like this really looks like and what is the best design for it. Because Brandon has a really crazy analogy to mycology, because he thinks that Bitcoin is very analogous to the kinds of monetary exchange that happens inside of biological systems, which is pretty cool.
If you are enjoying our podcast, you have listened to a number of episodes and you're thinking, what can I do to keep this thing growing and thriving? And you want to see more in-person events, you want to see more in-person interviews. The way you can support the project best at the moment is by coming over to patreon.com/demystifysci. And for as little as 75 cents a week, which is probably absolutely nothing to you that you wouldn't miss at all, you can contribute to making sure that we can put more and more effort into meeting those goals directly. So come and check it out. You also get a chance to get the episodes early every week. You get to come and hang out with us once a week at our weekly Sunday salon. And I would love to meet you and see you there. So check that out. You can also support the project by picking up one of our own designed hoodies down in the shelf below. We are not selling anything that we didn't make, and we want to keep it that way.
Another way that you can get involved in the project and you can support it is you can come to Paradigm Drift. This is the game show that we have started where we collect theorists' names all month, and then during the live taping, we pull names out of a hat, and if you get selected, you get 60 seconds to present your theory that you think is going to change the world, and then we interview you. The best theorists every episode get invited back for a second minute the next month, and so consider coming and signing up if you think that you have the idea that it takes to see the world in a new light.
We're also going to be starting up, or at least trialing, some sort of a live stream so that we can talk to you guys and answer your questions directly on some sort of regular basis. So keep an eye out on social or on the community post section of YouTube to see when that's going to happen. One final thing is, if you want to support the podcast and you're already a patron, you've already done all these things, maybe you love music, and we have some music for you, which we made ourselves. We actually have a vinyl record. We have a little band. We call it Secretary of Nature. We have printed these vinyl records. It is the perfect format to enjoy this kind of music, which is cosmic and poetic and says all of the things that we can't manage to put into words in a scientific discussion. You can check it out, though. We're going to play a little snippet of it leading into the conversation with Brandon. Otherwise, see you next time. Enjoy the conversation. Go with this first. I mean, one of the things we left off with was the fact that at the beginning of Bitcoin, there was no real exchange value of the coin itself. And so one of the problems I've seen over the years with the implementation of this is that what makes money useful is that I can go down to the convenience store or whatever I need to buy, or I can pay my mechanic in it, or whatever. Whenever I need to spend money, they take my money, right? And so what is the barrier to adoption? Why can't I spend Bitcoin on my groceries at Safeway right now? And do you see that changing? Something like that. Just the exchange and interconvertibility and the widespread usage of it, because it seems like a cool idea on its face. But if I still got to use government dollars at the end of the day, then I have to go through that damn central clearinghouse thingy, and we're left with somebody having ultimate god powers on my spending ability.
Yep, that's right. So a couple things. One, back to medium of exchange, right? Most people, the way they think about money is spending it. That's one of the three purposes of money. Medium of exchange and store of value, we talked about. My purchasing power maintains in the future. The third is unit of account. So what are goods priced in? Here they're priced in dollars, and the unit of account is last on that. That would be whatever is the most widespread. Typically, you want stable. But back to medium of exchange. So why can't you spend Bitcoin at the grocery store? Um, you can spend Bitcoin in more places than people think, but that's not really a good answer. If Bitcoin's great money, why isn't it ubiquitous? And the answer is that right now, Bitcoin's tiny. It's $2.5 trillion asset. Globally, we have about 1,000 trillion in value of all things added up, all real estate, all stocks, bonds, everything. It's about 1,000 trillion. So we're at a very, very small penetration today. After 16 years, it's an absolute miracle we're already here. Gold is about 10 times bigger at 25 trillion. It's been around for thousands of years. It's gone up a lot recently because the non-aligned countries are buying it in volume because they don't trust our government debt anymore. And so, do you think people spend their gold? Not really. Gold's the largest asset in the world and no one spends it. And so I wouldn't disqualify money because it's not widely used as a medium of exchange. I think some monetary theorists would define money as a widely used medium of exchange, but semantics aside, Bitcoin could be $100 trillion asset and very few people use it, right? And so back to your point on the dystopian path where you still got to use dirty fiat at the grocery store, um, I would consider Bitcoin transactions today as like nuclear security, no one can stop it, self-sovereign transaction. I personally don't care if the government observes my grocery store habits or my coffee store habits, but if I have a sensitive transaction today, I would use Bitcoin for that. Not for anyone listening, I don't have any sensitive transactions I make, but if I needed to, I would. Um, the
Neither
theory,
do we.
I
um,
think that this is the common reason that these exchanges have been shut down in the past, right? Which is that the sensitive transactions end up being they run the gamut from arbitrarily illegal things to things like, child pornography,
Human
where
trafficking
human
or
yeah,
Epstein level stuff.
all kinds of stuff. And so I guess is the principle that oh, go
But
ahead.
before we get to that, can I still tie up this thing about
Of
the
course.
exchangeability?
Of
I think
course.
that's a really interesting point about the usage of this. But is there a movement underway to pressure grocery stores to adopt these currencies? Because I would love it. Like I probably would have switched to this already if I could use it at Safeway.
Well, I think that everybody that I talk to is like, this isn't money that you spend. They're like, you hold it. This is an investment. This is like your retirement fund. This is not for you to go to the grocery store and buy Pepsi Cola.
Sorry,
This
most of
is
what I spend money on is food. So this this is
not how
no,
you
no,
think.
no. This is the idea that like, look, you have dollars, and if you hold dollars, the dollars will become devalued. And so what you do is you need some kind of asset that you can put those dollars into so that it will grow. And the same way that you buy a house and you don't sell it a week from when you bought it, you hold on to it for 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years so that when you sell it, it's gone up 300% or something. The principle, I don't see Bitcoin as being advertised as a transactional medium outside of these sensitive transactions. I see it being advertised by everybody who tells us to get into it as being a store of value that grows faster than the S&P 500, than a house, than the 2% interest rate on a or 2% rate
but
on a
but
savings account.
okay, but we are talking about it as a money, right?
Are we? Because Brandon was like careful to say just now. He's like, well, there's a difference between a medium of exchange and something that has monetary value, like gold. He's like, people buy gold, but they're not spending it. They're keeping it. They're like little smog dragons wandering around their gold layers. I guess this is the thing. Like,
Yeah, is this an investment scheme or a money?
Geography matters here. So, first of all, that was very well said. Second, geography matters. In the West, we have rule of law, we have Apple Pay and Venmo and Visa, and our banks are great, and we don't have really many problems. If you go to other places around the world, that's not the case. They inflate their currency like crazy. If you look at the African continent, there's over 2,000 payment networks and they don't communicate to each other. If I wanted to sell my goods to the neighboring country, that would be so expensive. And there's humans in that transaction and everyone gets a cut and it doesn't facilitate commerce. If you use Bitcoin, all of a sudden the entire world speaks the same economic language. Anyone can participate in the system and they're not responsible to their government's actions. Okay, if you're in Argentina, to throw them under the bus one more time, without Bitcoin, everyone goes down with the ship. With Bitcoin, intelligent people who look to the future can save a percentage of their wealth in Bitcoin, and now all of a sudden they're not beholden to the central bank that they're living under. And if you're an entrepreneur in a country and you have a great idea and you're super smart, but you don't have capital markets well developed, you can't fund your business. You can barely buy food because the currency keeps going up. You can't save in order to invest in a business. So we have all this human capital that's currently offline. They can't participate because of their geography, and they can't participate globally for the same reason. So you could have these people using Bitcoin, and now all of a sudden the best ideas can emerge. They can go to market, and you're liberating potentially the next Nikola Tesla, the Maya Angelou, the pick your favorite person in humanity. They're currently buried under an authoritarian regime without the ability to compete globally. And so it's my honest opinion, it's our moral imperative to make Bitcoin succeed because Bitcoin gives every person on the planet equal footing. Bitcoin doesn't know who you are. They don't know your race, your religion, your geography. They know nothing about you. Is your transaction valid? You're good to go. So it's an entirely voluntary system that anyone who needs it can use. Now
So,
going back full circle. In the West, we treat it as an investment because our medium of exchange function is well satisfied. If you go to developing countries like El Salvador, who's leaning into Bitcoin quite heavily, and there's many other examples, there's little local communities popping up where like 80% of the transactions are with Bitcoin. But those are unique situations, right? We gotta zoom way out. In 50 or 100 years, could Bitcoin be the primary currency? Yeah, but imagine what has to be unwound. This is a generation by generation thing to swap out of money. That's very disruptive. Like our parents are never going to consider that world to be real, right? Maybe our grandkids end up in that world. They'll never go to a bank, right? Everything will be digital. So, I think the longer history matters and I think the geography matters.
all right, let's swing back to the crime side of things.
well, I mean, I'm not sure that it really needs to be belabored. I mean,
Well, I have other crime questions as well.
sure. I mean, I think that there is one of the things that I do think that Bitcoin is truly valuable for is that there are plenty of things that are criminalized not because they have some true moral value that makes them deservedly criminal, but because it's some kind of protection racket for the government. For most pharmaceuticals. Like the idea that you can't just
Like
go,
cartel stuff, basically.
yeah, like
Legal cartels.
I mean, this is perhaps too political of speech for my tastes, but I find it to be absurd that the government can regulate the substances that you can put into your body, and that those substances basically make you a felon by virtue of their consumption. That feels somehow fundamentally oppressive in a way that, if you think about it too hard, kind of drives you crazy because as these substances get legalized, you see that there's these entire industries that grow up around them. And so it's this arbitrary distinction between what you can go and get freely versus what you can only get through an insurance company or a pharmaceutical company that's going to charge you extortionist rates. Okay, so great. Having a medium of exchange that allows you to circumvent those rules seems generally positive. Is there anything more to be said about that?
I agree, and I think that's where a lot of the transactions, at least that I'm aware of, are going down, which makes a lot of sense. But my question about the crime would concern the anonymity of transactions. So if something bad does happen, you can't really trace the provenance of it, right?
Mm.
Like if there, so I have experience, like I know friends who've been scammed, right? And they're usually scammed by somebody pretending to be one of these exchange clearinghouses. And it seems like it's basically impossible to trace back where this money has gone off to at the end of the day. Is that something that could be addressed, or is it something we're concerned with in this space?
Yeah, those are good questions. So, first, let's do the macro. So, Bitcoin's a new technology. It offers novel use case, and one of those use cases is it's hard to stop. If someone steals my credit card and they go buy a computer, hey, Capital One, turn off my thing, and they do. That's really nice. Whereas Bitcoin, if someone broke
I'll
into my
actually give you your
house,
money back, right?
exactly, they void the transaction and apples out the money. Um, which is a nice experience, right? What Bitcoin offers is there's no recourse. If someone stole your Bitcoin and it already got added to a block, it's on the ledger, your Bitcoin's gone. You can't call the Bitcoin CEO and reverse the transaction. So what that means is criminals are going to love Bitcoin because it's useful for them. You know who's the earliest adopter of cell phones? Criminals. The internet, criminals. Cars, criminals. Guns, criminals. And so we shouldn't turn off a useful technology because some subset of users find value. Everything we like, the bad guys use. And so you have to look at the whole encompassing picture. And I think on balance, it's a morally just thing that we should have. Now, if you're a government like the US government and you have a monetary advantage over the globe, right? Like the empire, America, might not like the idea of Bitcoin because the empire loses some of their own purchase on the planet if there's a tool that subverts them. That sounds pretty good to me. And so, on balance, I think it's moral. Your friends who lost money, this is a real thing. This is a PSA. And they're getting really good at this. People will text you, call you, email you. They'll create a fake website that looks like Coinbase. They'll try and get you to give them your passwords, and they're really good at it. I literally get minimum 5, sometimes 20 phone calls a day. Hey, this is a
Whoa.
Coinbase rep. Your coins are at risk. Better do something.
They have really nice British accents, I hear.
They're fantastic, and they make a lot of money, and they're often like 19. That's a whole crazy underworld. But anyways, this is real. It's going on. Why it matters is usually new people, they fall for this. Humans like to trust people, and they're good at it. So you voluntarily give up your passwords to whatever account you have, and then they go take your Bitcoin, and then you tell the cops, and the cops are like, nothing we can do about it. And so that's true. That's a real risk. That is a cost of the system, of which there are also benefits. And the other one is, can you trace it? This is a yes and no. So Bitcoin is pseudo anonymous. Okay. Going back to government regulations, if you buy your Bitcoin from Coinbase or any other exchange in the US requires you to follow Bank Secrecy Act, which means you have to do KYC or AML laws on the user. You have to verify the user's identity. Know your customer, anti-money laundering. So if you buy from Coinbase, you take a selfie, you show them your government ID, and then the coins that you withdraw are now associated with your real identity. So then you have sophisticated government actors and private actors, and what do? They spy on the network. And they try to link all your transactions together to try with statistics to say, we think this is your wallet because of this. And so it's actually not a great use case to commit crime on because the government's getting pretty good at disentangling those. Now, it's a cat and mouse game, as all cybersecurity is. So the best Bitcoin users who know all the latest tricks, they're dark. Good luck catching them. The average user, good luck being anonymous. Not happening. And so the tools are available for those who absolutely need it. Think a North Korean dissident. And there are NGOs that my friends run that arm these people with Bitcoin, and they give them wallets and tools to act anonymously, and they save countless lives and do amazing work in places that need it. But you and I, we're not getting away with any of that unless we dedicate the effort to go through that. Let's see. You also mentioned exchanges blowing up. I think that's another one on the PSA side. So what's unique about Bitcoin is you can custody it yourself, which means I physically have the Bitcoin in my possession. So you can leave it at Coinbase, you can leave it at Fidelity, you can take it yourself, and there's other options. And where that matters is exchanges get hacked. Everything gets hacked. So an exchange could get hacked and they could take your money. This has happened many times. Other exchanges, they offer lending products. So I deposit one Bitcoin and I get 50K in dollars back, and I do whatever I want with that. And then what that company did was they took my one Bitcoin and then they lent it out to someone else, called rehypothecation. Turns out the person they lent it to lost all the money. And then that cascades, the business goes bankrupt, and people lose some or all of their money. And so there is an inherent risk leaving your coins on an exchange. If you take custody yourself, you're not subject to the exchange risk, but now you have to physically store it yourself, which has a whole separate category of risk.
You gotta like put it on a USB card or something.
Kinda, yeah. And so what Bitcoin is private key, public key cryptography. That's how the spending occurs. Your public key is your address. You can find my address online, but the private key is the key to open my door. Okay, with Bitcoin, my private key, which is just a hexadecimal code, which you can also turn into 12 or 24 words, cat, dog, mouse, jellyfish, belly button, these 12 words I can use to spend my money. So if I'm trying to cross the border and I sow gold into my pockets and the border guard catches my money, I leave empty-handed. I can memorize 12 words, cross a border, and all my money is intact. Right. So again, it's weapons grade cryptography. And in the 90s,
sounds like that's what you're recommending, though, is that people don't leave their money in these exchanges, but that they actually keep it out. Like, do you have any more pointers like that for people who are just wading into this? And, you know, what kind of terrible shit has gone wrong that you've seen that you've found a way out of that you could maybe prepare people for who are listening to this, who want to experiment, but they're terrified because their buddy lost his life savings or whatever?
Great question. So step one is buy some Bitcoin, get off zero. If you have $5 worth of Bitcoin on your Cash App, do you really need to go through the process of managing your private keys and custodying it yourself? Hell no. It's $5.
Might be good practice.
It would be good practice. But from experience helping people do this, there's not enough incentive to do it, and it's legitimately intimidating. It's not harder than learning how to drive a car, but it's 100 times harder than buying on Coinbase and then walking away. And so there's a threshold that's different for all people when you cross from, leave it on exchange to, okay, the money's meaningful. Okay, I'm motivated. Okay, I better do something about it. And when you're approaching that period, that's when you want to go through the self-custody process. And that could be doing it all by yourself. That could be buy an ETF. That's a different type of risk than the crypto exchanges. I don't think Fidelity is going to lose your Bitcoin, for example. They could, but I don't think so. You could own it yourself, and there's tons of ways to do it. You could have a mobile phone app. You could literally write down 12 words on steel and bury it in your basement and bury it at your cabin in your cousin's house. Worst case scenario, you go pick up that steel plate and all your money's there. You could also do something called collaborative custody. I think this is actually the future. I think and with security, it's a trade-off from maximum security to maximum convenience. And where do you fall on that spectrum? Convenience is leave it there. Maximum security is steel plates and you hide them all over the place. But there's this middle ground that I consider the best. So there's a multi-signature custody setup. So remember, private keys move the money. In a multi-sig wallet, let's say you have 3 keys, so 3 private keys. In order to move the money, 2 of those keys have to sign the transaction. It's just like nuclear launch codes. President head of DoD, click. Without both keys, no money moves. And I can run that 203 all by myself. One key here, one key in another state. Or you do the collaborative custody. I own 2 keys, which means I can move my money at any time. But if my house burns down and I lose a key, I call the company that I'm working with and I go get my second key. Now I have one, company has one. Synchronize the keys, move your money. And that gives you a level of service that people can relate to, similar to traditional banking.
Wait, if your house burned down, you lost both your keys, right?
I'm really glad you caught that.
Well, I would never keep both keys in my house. It's not possible. If a guy came to my house with a gun, he couldn't get my Bitcoin unless he tortured me and put me on a plane and we went to another location to get the second key.
Got it.
But yeah, best practices is distribute your keys, have backups. To your point, people have gotten really cute with their security, really smart people, and they've lost all their money. So,
What do you mean really cute?
like an overly complex security system for themselves.
Like they couldn't get their own money back
Correct.
on themselves. Yeah, because I was going to say there must be people who just freaking forgot where they buried their thing or something. Like there must be money that's just disappearing off the face of the earth because.
Oh yeah.
So that's in some sense changing the overall value of the money base.
There's a guy that I think he had close to $1 million on a hard drive because that's where he has a private key stored on a hard drive, and he threw the hard drive away back in the early days of
Yes.
Bitcoin.
Oh, because he just thought it was worthless.
Yeah, he was like, "This is dumb. I'm done with this." And so he throws away the hard drive, and he was trying to petition the city where the landfill was that the hard drive went to excavate
Whoa.
the landfill in search of the hard drive, and they told him no.
Do you know how much that's worth today?
No.
$800 million.
I wouldn't even know what to do with $800 million, to be honest with
No,
you.
that's crazy money. Yeah, he stored keys on his laptop. He threw his old laptop away probably when Bitcoin didn't have a price. Or his ex-girlfriend threw it away in the breakup and somehow the money's gone. What I will say about this risk is losing your private keys was relatively common in the early days, and the tools to empower people have gotten way better. It still happens, but it doesn't happen very much.
Is this like what the company that you work for does? They're like helping people manage their Bitcoin?
Yeah, I work for swan.com. We're a competitor to Coinbase or Cash App or Kraken or Binance or any number of these. We focus on specifically Bitcoin. A whole nother category of risk is everything other than Bitcoin. We should talk about that.
Yes.
We focus on Bitcoin only. You can buy it from us. You can sell it. You can have a collaborative custody product, like I mentioned, called Swan Vault. You can have a retirement account and you can own Bitcoin in that. You can borrow against your Bitcoin, all different types of service. And we're more of like a boutique shop where we have extremely high levels of service. You get education, you get a one-on-one rep to help you with stuff. And so that's sort of our niche. But yeah, full service financial service company centered around Bitcoin.
All right, so we touched on Bitcoin as a kind of investment opportunity. I think.
We're headed towards Bitcoin as master organism on Earth. But before we get there, 2 things we need to talk about. One on the investment side and one in terms of how it relates to all of these other currencies and that you see popping up. On the investment side, doesn't the price of hasn't it like bubbled out before? It's gotten really expensive and then fallen. I actually don't know. I'd have to look at a graph of it, but I feel like it's over a long enough period of time, it is only up.
It's only up. Okay. Well, that answers my question.
Which is not the case for the other currencies, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so how does it relate to these other currencies, and why is Bitcoin the current? Why is it the future?
Absolutely. So a couple things. One on volatility. We should cover that. You're both right. There's been many booms and busts where Bitcoin goes up 10x and then it goes down 80% over the next year. That's real. It's also a function of its size. Small markets are easy to push around. It's also a function of imperfect knowledge. People don't really know what it is yet. And this leads to animal spirits, as they say. We get excited, we get greedy, the number's going up, and a whole bunch of people pile in because it's going up, and then it crashes. And so, as a Bitcoin investor, You wouldn't want to just plow your life savings into it on day one, and you especially wouldn't want to do it after it went up a ton. However, the appropriate way for almost all investors is to set up a daily, weekly, or monthly recurring purchase. So I buy $50 a week or whatever fits into your budget. You just auto buy, you forget about it. By buying consistently over time, you get an average price over time, and you don't buy too much, get scared, and then sell the bottom, which also happens. Investing's hard. Our biology betrays us here. We want to buy when the number is going up, and we want to sell when the number is going down. And obviously, the opposite is how you become a successful investor. And so the average person is not suited for that, in which case, just set up a recurring buy, don't sell it for as long as you possibly can, like minimum 5 years. And then if you go look at the Bitcoin chart, there are 0 people who bought Bitcoin on one day, held it for 4 years or more, and lost money. There's not a single period in time where that's true. Now, tons of people, and that's if you bought the tippy top at 20K in 17, if you bought the tippy top at 69K in 2021, doesn't matter. You're always up after 4 years. Historically, not necessarily going to be true in the future, although I think it will be.
Yeah, it seems like the only people who win at that speculative stuff are like Congress people and stuff, like people who know what's actually happening tomorrow.
Yeah, insider trading is running rampant all out through our government.
Wasn't there some kind of like gigantic thing that happened in Bitcoin like 2 weeks ago where a lot of people lost a lot of money and there's some kind of weird insider trading thing?
Let's see. I mean, Bitcoin's crazy. Time accelerates. The cycles are so fast. I'm not even sure what you're referencing. I'm sure something big happened in the last 2 weeks. It always happens. I don't know what you're referencing though.
Let me see if I can find it. Shiley, do you want to?
Should we talk
Yeah,
scams? Or
yeah. Let's talk. Well, let's talk. We need to bridge this into the. I want to know how Bitcoin relates to the other monies and why you
yes.
think that it's the future compared to all of these other things. I mean, yeah, we've been privy to a lot of these other currencies blowing up in people's faces, and why is Bitcoin why is it the front runner? Why do you think it's the most secure future version of this?
Yeah, there's a ton of points here. The first one is there's 25,000 different coins on coinmarketcap.com. That doesn't even account for all of them. It's probably over 10,000. If you look at those, why is Bitcoin unique? It's the only one without a central party issuing the coins. So that's a very, very big deal. So other coins, a foundation, and they obfuscate the centralized party if they're sophisticated. We set up this cute little council, and the council determines the monetary policy. Well, that's just like all the other currencies. The currency gets destroyed because of the incentives. Like, essentially, the ability to control the money printer is too powerful for humans to have. If you want to summarize Bitcoin, it's that. Humans can't be controlled to control the money, so we outsource it to math.
I get it.
And
I mean,
all the other ones are like that.
that makes
Come
sense.
up with cute marketing. They're incredibly good at marketing. There's a lot of money to be made, so they can do a lot with that money to do marketing stuff. Humans are greedy. They get caught up in something, they tell their friends. And yeah, I mean, in 2017, personal story, when I first got into this stuff, I was trading all these altcoins. I made a ton of money. And then in 2018, I pretty much lost it all because I was buying all these, what we now call shitcoins, and I didn't know what I was doing. And so people shilling some other coin to you, they're like 3 years away from being wrong and they don't know it yet. And they're giving you bad advice.
What kind
And
of things should people look out for? Like, what are people saying to attract you to these altcoins, these shit coins?
number go up, that's it. You're going to make money. And they'll say, well, look at this regulation coming. Look at this cool tech innovation that's better than Bitcoin in this one narrow way, which could be true. But in concert, there is a better money and a bunch of worse monies. And if you go look at the price charts of all these, you made a great point earlier. Bitcoin goes up and down, but it keeps recovering and creating new all-time high prices. The other coins, they launch, there's some hype, they pump once, and they die. There's a couple exceptions to that, but over time, if you price any of those 25,000 in Bitcoin terms, So 2 assets over each other. Every single asset goes down against Bitcoin over time. 10 years ago, buying a house was 1,000 Bitcoin. 5 years ago, buying a house was 100 Bitcoin. Buying an average house now is 3.5 Bitcoin. In 5 years, the average house will be less than 1 Bitcoin. And just to illustrate that point.
Okay,
And
so
so I would
this is something
avoid.
that I really struggle with. This is something that I really struggle with. Like you're saying that, like, okay, so you'd avoid the other ones. I totally get that. I think that you're totally right that they're just people that maybe the protocols aren't as good. But there's also this other piece of it, which is this same like Tinkerbell is only alive because everybody believes in fairies. Like Bitcoin is a thing that operates and works only insofar as people believe that it is a legitimate store of value and a legitimate thing to exchange for. And so you see, I was
Well,
looking.
as long as people are putting their actual energy and sweat into it, right?
It doesn't matter. Like I can dig something out of the ground and put a lot of. This is the thing, because the number does not have an inherent value to it, right? So the same way that if you dig gold out of the ground, the gold is an actual physical object that is universally accepted and has been for much of human history to have value. The number that you have dug out of the ground in Bitcoin mining is not inherently valuable. What is valuable is the fact that there's this universal belief in the fact that Bitcoin will do the thing that you think that it will do. And it seems to me that the stock chart of it, the stock chart of it is indicative of the fact that periodically people lose faith in the fact that this thing is real, and then they sell and its value falls. And so it does seem like inherently this thing that is foundationally based on faith much more
But
than
it
something
seems
like
much
gold
better
is.
buffered than its alternatives in this space.
It's not, well,
And I
it
think what
depends.
buffers
What do you
it
say
is the
buffering?
mining.
What do you say buffering?
It's buffered because it still continues to rise over time, much like the stock market or something.
Okay, so yes, but
Presumably because the stock market is at the end of the day based on companies doing stuff.
yeah, but that's the
And
thing. That's the thing, is that like the dot-com crash happens because people put a ton of money and hype into companies that they think are capable of performing some action, right? And it turns out at the end of the day, when the bubble bursts and the dust clears, that there's really only a couple of companies that are doing something. It's like Amazon and eBay and PayPal. Like, those are really the big names that survived the crash. And the reason that they survived the crash is because they have a product. And so when I look at something like Bitcoin, I'm sure that it is more functional than all of the other altcoins and the scams and the rug pulls and the Doge and the like whatever else is. I think the Trump minted a coin.
anybody can do it. We could make a DemystifySci coin.
Like a year ago, people were like, "You should make a DemystifySci coin." But the thing fundamentally that I'm alarmed by is that it is faith-based. The minute that people stop believing that this is real,
But anything other than carrying sticks and stones in your pocket is, right? And
Correct.
even that.
Correct.
yeah.
All money. You're getting to a very interesting rabbit hole, which is what is money?
Mm.
Money is that what you're describing. It
Yeah.
is trust. We assign value to an abstract medium and we all hallucinate, if you want to use that word, together. However, that doesn't mean that certain things aren't better at money. Gold is better at money than apples. So we both hallucinate the value, but at the end of the day, individuals choose, do I want to store my wealth in apples or do I want to store my wealth in gold?
But
And
this is the
that
crazy.
is the key.
So this is the crazy thing about Bitcoin, which is that if there is a government that is like, hey, I'm going to give you tally sticks, and those tally sticks are your tax burden, and at the end of the year,
Oh yeah, taxes.
the exchequer is going to come and is going to collect all of these tally sticks and is going to make sure that you've paid however much you need to pay. And the reason that people play this entire game is because they're like, okay, well, in return for believing in the money that you have issued me, you're going to do something for me. You're going to protect me. You're going to raise an army. You're going to build bridges. You're going to build infrastructure. There's like,
You're gonna give me health care. Oh wait, no, you're not.
yeah, you're going to have a series of noble people sitting at the whatever. That doesn't come as part of the Bitcoin ecosystem, because inherently it is a system where that you're believing in different things. And I see people inside of Bitcoin that sell Bitcoin really hard. They're like, you should definitely get into Bitcoin. Like, it's definitely like Bitcoin's the next thing. Like, I was trying to find that thing on Twitter that I was mentioning about some like huge devaluation of Bitcoin in the last month. And literally every single post is like, buy Bitcoin now. It's going to be $1 million soon. It's already at 100,000. It's going to be 1 million. If you don't get in now, you're going to be a member of the permanent underclass. Buy, 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 buy. And that just feels alarming to me. It feels scammy. It feels fishy. It feels like people are trying to convince everybody else to buy into an asset that they hold because it benefits them directly. The people that already hold Bitcoin only benefit from people buying more Bitcoin.
All good points. Let's go through them. So, evangelism. This is real. I am among the Bitcoin evangelists. Why do I donate my time and talents for 8 years to this thing? Right. That rankles a lot of people. And the crazy foaming at the mouth Bitcoin people, they genuinely believe what they say, and they are genuinely trying to help you. However, we have defense mechanism in us. When a shisty thing is coming up and we're getting pushed something too hard, we are allergic to it. That's a good thing that we have. And so the foaming at the mouth evangelists, of which I was one, it's wholly ineffective. And so why do people get to that point? When you discover Bitcoin and you see it in context and you feel like you understand what it is, and you can start to look into the future and see how it makes both your life better and the world better, you do have a feeling like you discovered a secret of the universe and you discovered something that other people don't know about. That's why you'll see rabbit hole everywhere you look in Bitcoin. It's one of the common memes because you're falling down this rabbit hole and leads you to monetary theory and history and game theory, and now you're learning energy markets, and now you know cryptography, and you're obsessed with macro and geopolitics because Bitcoin money touches everything. And so it's an entry point to a broad syllabus of understanding the world, and people get obsessed with it. When I discovered Bitcoin, I was like 3 to 6 months, 16 hours a day. I never left my house. My girlfriend, now wife, is like, what are you doing? You don't shower, you don't see your friends, you fall asleep on the couch listening to a YouTube video, you wake up and you hit play and you go again. And so it captures people. And so that's where the evangelism comes from. TradFi hates it. They're like, why are you emotional about your assets? You're trying to get me to buy it. And that is true, right? If more people buy Bitcoin, my Bitcoin goes up in value on the margin. But me convincing you guys to put $10,000 worth of into Bitcoin doesn't do anything to Bitcoin's price. Like $100 million trades a day or something like that. And so incentives are true, but it's not really moving the margin. No one's trying to convince their friends so their Bitcoin's worth more. They're trying to convince people they love to not get screwed because they believe the future success of most people relies on them owning some Bitcoin.
But that's because somebody told them.
Well, no, it's because
They came to that conclusion.
It seems like on first principles, like he could be like Brandon could be misleading us about something or leaving out some really.
I don't think he is.
No, I don't think he is either. That's not what I'm saying.
Come on.
Look, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying like the story he paints is a beautiful, heroic cyberpunk story of like finding a way around this crazy Orwellian future that's already unfolding in parts of the world where the government has the ability to turn off your car as you're driving it, basically, or like stop you from getting gas at the gas station because you speak out, or because you figure out how I don't know, like the real story behind the pandemic or whatever the heck it is. Like seems like a really valuable tool the way he's presented it, and he could be misleading us. It's not, and I love you, dude. I'm not saying that you are. I'm just like, it's possible for the sake of argument, like it's possible. But if the story he's telling is on its face complete and accurate, then it seems like it's a cool tool that people like.
It's literally the best investment presentation possible. Do you know, you go to Hawaii and they're like, hey, if you come to a timeshare presentation.
I'm not even seeing it as an investment. Like I'm not being seduced to invest in it.
No. I'm not saying that you are.
I am seduced by it.
Same way.
Well, I like the idea that I would have a pool of spending capital that wasn't subject
You
to.
can't spend it, bro. You have to hold it for 4 years.
I know there are like that's another. So let me ask you this: I have no idea about your financial situation. I don't know if you're rich or poor or what, but what percentage of your wealth do you like? I don't know if you're comfortable talking about this, but I'm going to try anyways. Like what percentage
Of your
lives in
spending
of your
money, right?
well, yeah,
Because
of your financial life? Like, do you buy your house and cars with Bitcoin? Do you keep a big bank account on the side? Like, how does this play out in somebody who's an expert at this? What does your life look like?
Yeah, so I own two things, Bitcoin and equity in Swan. I was one of the first employees at Swan, been there 6 years, strong company. So that position has become meaningful relative to my Bitcoin. But if I didn't have equity in my company, I would own Bitcoin and enough dollars to not make my wife too nervous.
Do
So
you buy you have to buy groceries and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Do you own your house? Do you own a car?
I do. I rent my house. I own a few cars. Um, I could buy a house, but that would be opportunity cost against holding more Bitcoin. So do I want to put a down payment or I want to buy another Bitcoin? Right. And so I view Bitcoin as an investment that I'll store as long as humanly possible. I'll sell everything else I own before my Bitcoin if I can help it. And yeah, I have dollars. Like my salary's in dollars. I pay my rent. I buy my groceries. I go on vacation with dollars.
Got it.
Right. But any excess that I can invest, I put into Bitcoin.
I see. So it's almost entirely an investment thing for you. You don't do transactions in it for the most part.
I mean, I've done hundreds of transactions, but they're novelties. You know, if I'm at a Bitcoin conference and they set up some cool bazaar with all these fun ways to spend your Bitcoin, I'll play with it.
Got it.
But remember, I expect Bitcoin to go up and I know dollars are going down. So you spend the bad money and you hoard the good money. That's rational. There's also a tax implication. You brought up you had to pay your taxes in dollars, um, which I think is people use as an argument for the value of a currency, which is partially true. There is an inherent demand for dollars. Everyone has to hold enough
The
dollars.
MMT guys would say that's the entire root of the whole story. Essentially, it's like, and it really does impact you. Like we've been like flirting with different places to live in the United States, and it's like, man, where we live right now, we like basically pay no taxes, and that's really really nice because we look at other places and it's like, oh my god, this is basically like paying rent. Even if you own your house, like you owe the government so much money
Are you in
constantly.
Nevada?
We're in Oregon right now.
Oregon?
Southern Oregon, like in the middle of
Oh
nowhere,
yeah, you told
basically.
me that actually. Super, super, super south.
Yeah. But I mean, man, if we were looking at places in California or something, it's like people are paying what people here pay in rent, people pay in property taxes down there. It's just nuts.
I think actually they pay more.
Yeah, more. So taxes are a legitimate concern for people.
Yeah, and like it is a partial source of demand for the dollar, so it does help prop up the dollar, but that doesn't necessarily say anything to Bitcoin. Um, right? Bitcoin could be $100 trillion, and I'll still pay my taxes in dollars, and my savings account's Bitcoin. And
It's just
so,
really fascinating because you have this biological story that you tell about it, which I think is related to this. It's related to the story because I don't want to say how I see it being related to the story until I hear your presentation on it. Do you think that we've
Yeah,
covered this?
let's flip over to it. Yeah, because we're gonna run out of time otherwise. And I don't know. This is fascinating to me. I'm just really I appreciate you sharing all the details of your personal life. That might have been too far, but
no, no,
it
no.
helps me make sense of what it's like to live in this
It's the
ecosystem.
right question, right? If I'm over here evangelizing Bitcoin and I have 10% Bitcoin and 90% S&P 500, that's not a very strong message. If I've been all in on Bitcoin since 2018 and all free cash flows go to Bitcoin from 2018, that's a very different story, right? And so
And I
Absolutely.
mean, occasionally you hear people buying houses with Bitcoin or something. I don't know. I just don't know to the
you can.
extent to which people, you know, a normal person who's investing in this is actually using it transactionally. But I think we got that. Let's check out the ecological parallels of this.
My pleasure. So quick background. I got into Bitcoin in 2017. Really, I got into crypto. Then I lost a bunch of money. Then I did another deep dive, economics from the ground up. This time I introduced the Austrian school, read all the books. Really, like, am I a dumbass? And I don't know if I am or not. So I better study really hard to either justify my poor decisions or at least know I made a poor decision to move on. And I'm stubborn like that. So, nose to the grindstone here. Out of that, I realized that Bitcoin is the thing, the others are not. I reoriented my entire life around that. At the time, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and I were traveling around the world building online businesses. So we spent about 5 years. I don't know if they use the term. We called it digital nomad. Find a place to live, do your thing, but you're building companies online. That was sort of the context. Then I re-architected everything. I sold that business. I did all kinds of nonsense jobs trying to break in the industry. I wrote essays. I sold digital products. I had a consulting firm for a year, all kinds of stuff. Then I joined Swan. And I've been there since. And during that period where I would consider myself finding conviction in the asset, learning it, one of the things that helped me was I noticed parallels with mycology. And I'm an amateur, no formal training, but I'm like 15 years into being a mycophile, just obsessed with this stuff. And so I have a top 1% understanding of mycology and a top 1% of Bitcoin. You apply those two together and
those are mushrooms for people on the street, by the way.
Sorry, thank you. You overlap those things and you can generate some novel insights. And I was at a Bitcoin meetup in Bali in 2018, and someone gave a presentation about Bitcoin, and they were showing the topography of the Lightning Network, which is a layer 2 payment layer on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. You can think of it like deferred payments like Visa. So instant transaction fee or speed, no fees, better privacy, and those two kind of interact with each other. Anyways, it was very early in the Lightning Network. He shows a map, there's nodes, and there's connections between the nodes, and I'm like, wait, that kind of looks like a mycelial network. So I ride my little scooter home, and like a manic psychopath scribbling in a notebook for like 2 hours, I came up with a bunch of ideas, which later became essays and talks at conferences and potentially a future book. And what I found out of that was that because Bitcoin mimics this decentralized network archetype that we find in fungi, because it's a successful strategy for now we know billions of years, that gave me more confidence that the architecture that Bitcoin has is very robust and it's going to be very hard to stop. Okay, so if Bitcoin is what we say it is, it's the best money. I think that's black and white true. Then you would say, well, what if a government doesn't want to give up their power of controlling the money, which of course they don't want to? Wouldn't they just stop it? So a rational next question is, how do you kill this thing?
Pardon the interruption, but I have to ask you for a favor. If you are listening to this conversation and you are enjoying it, then come over to patreon.com/DemystifySci. For 75 cents a week, you can help us power this ship to become something that is far greater than just a Zoom podcast. We'll see you there.
And you start doing all your research, and through that, many things other than fungi, I realized this thing is the hardest thing to kill we've ever created. And if that's true, and it's the best money, then it's just a matter of time and people understanding what it is, getting comfortable with it, that it feels inevitable. And that brings me hope for the future, because I used to be someone who voted harder, making phone calls I was calling people for Bernie Sanders during the 2016 campaign. I was politically engaged. I thought this was the way to enact my view of the world. Watch Bernie get snubbed, a series of other events, '08, COVID, all these different things, politicians making money. You start to see the world as a little bit more rigged, and you see Bitcoin as a technological solution to ultimately a political problem. Then cypherpunks write code, right? Now I'm on team build the new system. Don't try and change the old system. And so that's kind of the meta here. Should we do like a 2-3 minutes on Fungi 101? Because I think it's important to lay that foundation.
Otherwise, dude, you got me hyped up. I hope you're right. I'm just like, yeah, hell yeah, build the new. Yeah, I'm like, this is awesome. I really want to believe in this stuff. So yeah, but yeah, let's talk about fungi.
Yeah, let's do it.
What's the lives of mushrooms like? Because all
First
we
of all,
ever hear about is people eating them and seeing God. So
which I
let's
fully support as well. I'm on
uh,
Team Cognitive Liberty, to your point earlier.
it seems to be
So
better for some people than others. But yeah,
agreed.
what's the lives of mushrooms? You know, they're out there in the forest doing their thing. What is
Yeah.
that thing?
So first, shout out to you guys. You guys are going deep. I've done hundreds of these. Not a single person went that deep technically, and you're wrapping on the mission side here, why people evangelize, and seeing some sparks there makes me very, very happy personally. So just shout out quick. All right, Fungi 101. Most people think about mushrooms. You go to the store, you buy your button mushrooms, you have the red and white Amanita emoji, you have psilocybin mushrooms. However, that mushroom is just like the apple on a tree. That is the reproductive organ of an organism, that which you do not see. The primary form that a fungus might take is mycelium, or a mycelial network. This is in every ecosystem. It's living in 80% of trees. It's essentially everywhere, but you don't see it. Now, if you're in the woods and you flip over an old rotting dead log, you might see some white thing that looks like white filaments, kind of like cotton. That would be mycelium. Most people have never seen it. What is mycelium? It's a one cell walled network underground. Think tubes, pumps, pulleys, levers, and this network, again, one cell wall wide, connects into other trees. It goes into their roots. The trees communicate through chemistry with the mushroom, and the trees let the mushroom in. That creates a trade network underground. And there's all different types of mushrooms, but the coolest one is mycorrhizal fungi. That means that the trees and the mushrooms connect. The trees produce fats and sugars through photosynthesis. That's what the mushroom eats. The mushroom mines minerals underground, phosphorus, nitrogen, all oxygen, everything. And it trades those resources with the trees in exchange for what they produce. This is a 1 + 1 = 3 situation. The minerals that the mushrooms mine are the only reason why we have trees taller than 1 meter. Without those minerals, you cannot create a strong tree and create giant redwoods or whatever your favorite tree is. And the current thinking, at least as far as I can tell, is that roots evolved originally to find mushroom allies because those who had the mushroom allies outcompeted those who didn't. The latest science here is they put some chemicals into the ground and the mushrooms consume them. So now we have little glowy dots and we can watch those glowy dots move around. So you essentially like tag some oxygen or tag some nitrogen and you see the trade happening. And what they're finding now is there's whole economies underground. The mushrooms have trade policy. The mushrooms buy high and they sell low. They reward their better trade partners. They hoard resources. And then when there's a drought, maybe it's water, maybe it's something else, then they can sell those resources at a higher price. And so economics is built into fungi at a very, very, very deep level. Sorry, I got ahead of myself.
Is it buy low, sell high, or buy high, sell low?
You'd want to buy low and sell high to maximize your advantage.
Okay,
Yes.
you said the opposite. Yeah, I was just
Yes.
making sure. I was like, oh no, my my fundamentals are wrong.
No, you're right. Thank you for the correction. Fungi have their own kingdom. So there's plants, animals, fungi, etc. Only 10% of the fungi kingdom produce mushrooms. And mushroom kingdom is larger than plants and animals combined. We know of 500,000, maybe up to 1 million species is what we estimate. Most of them are yet undiscovered, which is very interesting. And animals and fungi are more closely related on the evolutionary tree. So plants and animals would separate. There used to be a super kingdom, but let's just say plants and animals separate. Plants find their own food, they're autotrophs. Mushrooms and animals are heterotrophs. Plants make their own food, autotrophs. Mushrooms find their own food, heterotrophs. Now you have plants and animals, they diverge because mushrooms digest, they have an external stomach. They use chemistry to go in their environment and they dissolve their environment from the inside. Whereas animals, we have an internal stomach. We put food in, we pull the nutrients out, and we get rid of the waste. And so we both inhale oxygen, mushrooms and humans, and we exhale carbon dioxide. the oldest fossil that we found of multicellular life, 2.4 billion years old, is a mushroom. And so it's mycelium. And these organisms are extremely anti-fragile. They are the extremophiles. They can survive in any condition. So let's say 65 million years ago, we assume asteroids hit the Earth, kill all the dinosaurs. In that period, obviously, we're blocking the sun, gets really cold. Cold-blooded animals like the dinosaurs mostly die off. The tenric, which is a little mouse or shrew, had the ability to go underground and essentially hibernate for long periods of time. That tenric was able to survive until the clouds were gone, sun comes out, comes back up, and now we have the rise of mammals, which is obviously where we came from. But during that period, clouds are gone. Who inherits the earth? Dinosaurs die off, mammals can't find food, so they got to hide. The mushrooms inherit the earth. They find their own food. What do? They decompose all the dying leaves, all the plant material. They decompose animals. They work with the plants that can survive, and they trade resources. So they essentially become the leader of the planet. And what do? They rehabilitate ecosystems for their own benefit. They help trees out, which then helps the mushroom out. And they also create topsoil. Rocky planet, we have what, a couple feet of topsoil after a really long time? That's because mushrooms and plants decompose rock and they liberate the minerals and resources out of them and consume them in a more usable form. And so that's why we have topsoil, why we can grow food, and why we have 8 billion people here. Let's see. The largest organism on our planet is a honey mushroom in Eastern Oregon, near you guys in the mountains. It's estimated to be about 5,000 years old and 2,000 or 3,000 acres in size. They didn't even know until someone took a plane over the mountains. They're like, why are all these giant gaps? Why is the forest getting decimated? Then they do some science and they realize it's one organism spread out across this whole thing. So these are extremophiles.
Is it parasitic or something? Why is it screwing with the trees? Oh, it's a bad fungus.
Well, are parasites bad? I mean, depends on whose perspective. They renew the forest. They create dead trees. A forest fire comes. It actually contributes to the ecosystem over long periods of time. So parasite gets a bad name, but they do play a role in our ecology.
And it's so interesting that people confuse mushrooms as plants. As you were telling that story about the difference between them, I thought that was just so fascinating. Like it reminds me of one of those words that people use all the time, but they have no idea what it means. Like life itself is another one. It's like everybody kind of knows it when they see it, but nobody can actually define it in a non-circular way. But I feel like plants is kind of the same way in a sense, because I mean, don't mushrooms, like people always talk about mushrooms as plant medicine and stuff like that. Like it gets thrown into that bag for some reason, but in some sense, they couldn't be more different than plants.
That's fair.
Like,
I mean, it's something
really
that grows out of the. I feel people are like, it grows out of the ground. That goes in the bin of plant.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
See how they got there, but you're right. There couldn't be more divergent.
I mean, technically, tomatoes are fruits, so it's like
I'm fine with all that.
But I think that's the thing, is that like plants and fruit are not technical terms.
Mushrooms have fruiting bodies too.
Yeah, like I think that people are just they're vibing, you know.
They're vibing. One point there, I think it was up until the 70s, the mycology department didn't exist. It was a sector under horticology. So we didn't even pull them out in universities until like 50 years ago.
That's really funny.
And yeah, language is a brute force technology that is not so precise. Super useful, but we catch ourselves up.
It's funny to think there must have been some sort of Satoshi. Is that his name? Satoshi mushroom cell at some point from that universal common ancestor of all of these cells, who was like, I'm going to find a different way to go about these things. Like, I love thinking about the tree of life in terms of these decisions that were made at whatever primitive level. You know, everybody thinks of like the Darwinian picture is just so inadequate because it's all of this random stuff happening and random mutation and stuff. But the reality is, like, organisms have proclivities and individuals have proclivities. And there's a guy named Satoshi who was like, I'm going to make this happen. And I guarantee you there was a cell at some point, or a community of cells that were like, we're going to try something different. And whatever primitive way in which they cognated that process to happen, this sort of same decision point that humans are going through now with Bitcoin, if you're right, must have happened for these cells at some point too.
I love that. Absolutely true. One other interesting with fungi, and we're almost done with this section in my mind. So humans have been using fungi for as far back as we can look. There's a famous example of a man found in the Australian Alps, obviously a cold place. So we got a perfect intact body from like 5,000 years ago. Then you go look at this guy. What does he have? What does
You're talking
Ötzi have?
about Ötzi. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
What
love
does he have
Ötzi.
on him? Very few possessions. I think he had three
Like
or
a
four.
bunch of herbs and stuff, right? He's got like some
2 mushrooms and a knife, and maybe
No,
like.
he has like 300 different kinds of herbs
yeah,
in
he
his
had like all these
pouch.
plants and stuff too, right?
Oh, did he have more?
I
I'm
think
not
he
aware.
had like hundreds of herbs. I don't know. We could look
Yeah.
it up. I don't have a
That's
computer.
amazing. I need to look that up. The takeaway here is that of his limited possessions, let's say he had a herb library, a little apothecary, and some other tools. He had 2 mushrooms. One was a tinder polypore, which is an amazing mushroom where you can put an ember of some, you have a little fire, you put a little ember in there and you cover it up. You can maintain that ember for days. So if you're crossing the Swiss Alps, you better have fire. You're not making it through the night. The other thing he had was birch polypore, which I find all the time in my local. Both of these you can find all over the northern half of the US. They're all over Oregon. Birch polypore is active against a parasite he had in his stomach. And if you dry birch polypore, it becomes super hard enough to sharpen a knife. So he can sharpen his knife, cure his illness, and have fire, all from 2 mushrooms on his person. So it's clear that the humans who adopt this technology outcompete. I think the parallel with Bitcoin is there quite sound. And if anyone likes beer, medicine like penicillin, chocolate, coffee, tea, bread, all these things require fungi to be real. And so thank your fungal allies for those. Let's see.
Dude, that's so crazy that they would have had these parasitic treatments. Because I've often thought when I'm out in the back country and stuff, how if I didn't have water purification systems, I'd be toast pretty fast. Like some sort of Giardia or naturally occurring amoebas would just take me out pretty fast. And I think if I look back across the history of the world, it seems like those kind of diseases did kill, at least in recorded history, killed a lot of people. Like diarrheal diseases are responsible for most of the deaths, from what I can tell.
Correct.
And so, but the funny thing is that a technology like that would have been lost, like a prehistoric. I don't know how old Ötzi is, but prehistoric, right? No, they weren't keeping records back then.
3000 BC.
3000 BC. So, I mean, some parts of the world are keeping records, but not in the Swiss Alps. And so that's so fascinating that they would have had this technological solution that didn't involve purifying water.
Have you heard of the
and
beer?
We've lost it.
Have you heard of the beer theory of civilization?
No, hit me.
So addresses this directly. Yeah, you're right. Waterborne illness, biggest problem. We used to like go to the bathroom next to our water source, right? We didn't know that that could possibly affect it. And if you can't trust your water, it's pretty hard to develop a population. Enter beer. Beer is made through a combination of a grain and some fungus, and you get this byproduct beer. What's cool about beer? There's no bad stuff in it. So if you brew beer, your whole village doesn't have problems with water anymore. And you can brew a very low alcohol beer, which is what they were doing. So everyone's drinking beer, and the civilizations with beer outcompeted those who didn't. And so that would be a technology that we didn't know mushrooms were involved. We discovered the process on accident. Same with wine.
I've heard that about wine in ancient Rome for sure. I think that the average citizen in Rome was drinking like 2 to 3 liters a day, something like that.
Amazing.
So
I'm sure it was weak and diluted and everything, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense that it would have been safer for sure.
That's right.
Fascinating.
And so is the metaphor for you more that there's just this tendency to succeed by doing things in a different way, or is it more literal than that?
Yeah, let's get into it. I haven't even got like the main points. That was my excessive preamble for why the stuff even matters.
The man loves mushrooms.
It's true. So I'm going to give you like 6 points, and then we can go down any one of them as you see fit. One, Mycelium acts like a decentralized brain. So it's that decentralized network archetype. So does Bitcoin. All these things apply to Bitcoin. Anti-fragility. They're both immune systems. They both decompose and recycle resources. They liberate them and allow them to be used. Bitcoin acts like a pioneer species, which is an amazing case study. Both produce something called social scalability, another Nick Szabo term, which just means like technologies that allow us to cooperate at scale. So the English language allows us to cooperate better. Money allows us to cooperate better. Property rights, rule of law, right? These are social scalability technologies. And there's also an interesting parallel with the growth of a mushroom and the growth of Bitcoin in these hype cycles. So those are like the 6 main ones. Each one is pretty interesting. I think we've covered the decentralized network archetype, but let's just get the bullets out. That mycelial network, okay, millions of endpoints underground. Think of this network of root, kind of like little roots. If you cut that network in half, what happens? Now you have 2 networks, right? You can't cut the head off a mushroom. You can't take the central processing unit out of the mushroom. No one's making decisions. It's a network, and decisions are made on the edge based on local information. And that network creates a decentralized consensus on, do we go eat that food? Do we run away from that predator? Do we produce a mushroom and reproduce? Do we conserve resources? And that mirrors the inner subjective consensus of the Bitcoin network. Okay, the nodes, they determine which version of the software do they want to run. New versions come out, maybe you don't like the rules, right? The miners, they decide which blocks go in. The exchanges, the wallets, the merchants, the users, they shepherd users. They give them tools to interact with this thing. And everyone that I just named, they voluntarily participate, and that aggregate consensus forms what we call the Bitcoin network. So it's computers, it's humans, it's how we apply value to abstraction. You put all that together, it becomes this weird network. Okay. And when I wrote the first essay, the thing that stood out to everyone was the slime mold. Are you guys familiar with this?
Discoideum, this slime mode thing, the guy that turns into a slug. No, which one is this?
No, this is the one that I think that they've used before to solve mazes.
Yes.
There was a really cool example where they drew like a map of Japan on a petri dish, and then they placed little pieces of food at where the major cities were, and then they inoculated the plate with slime mold, and it recapitulated the Japanese metro system.
Well said. That's exactly right. And how crazy is that, right? And technically not mushrooms. They are amoebas, formerly in the fungi kingdom. But yeah, this one cell wall.
Like,
they
let's
jumped
be clear.
kingdoms?
No, this is like the problem with mushrooms is that the way that they categorize them is basically by gross physiology. And then they start to sequence them and they're like, oh, fuck, they're not at all what we thought that they were. And so
I see.
they're categorizing them and then they start to sequence them and they realize that their simplistic macro scale characteristics didn't actually give them true genetic lineages.
That's well said. And yeah, there's no such thing as a kingdom or a phylum or a genus. Those are human barriers that we create, right? Obviously. But what's interesting with the slime mold is a one cell walled organism simulates intelligence in a way that creates a system comparable to the best engineers on our planet. And so, how is that possible? Well, because intelligence, there isn't one type of intelligence. We like to look down on these amoebas, but they can compete with us in certain ways. And that problem that the slime mold solve is called the traveling salesman problem. If I have 10 stops on my day to different companies to sell them stuff, how do I optimize my route based on all the variables? It's a very computationally complex problem, and the amoeba does it with grace because the amoeba is not a central processing unit. It's a bunch of individuals acting in their own best interests, and they like to form a colony together. And so, just like Bitcoin, decision making is pushed to the edge, and that gives you some sort of confidence that you can't just call the CEO and turn off Bitcoin, and it's a lot harder to stop. And which brings us to point 2, which is anti-fragility. right? There's no central point of failure. So it is a peer-to-peer network. And okay, what happens if the mushrooms notice a new bacteria coming to eat them? Okay, the mushroom sends information. By the way, it sends resources and informationally bidirectionally. It sends information around the network. Then specialized mushroom cells create a new custom enzyme. They're the masters of chemistry. Most of our medicine was first created by fungi, and then some pharma company changes the molecule and calls it your favorite drug. And mushrooms create those different chemicals to protect themselves, right? So information comes to a little mushroom scientist. They create a new custom enzyme. They ship it around the network. They deal with that predator. Now that mushroom or that organism has a library of defense molecules. Over time, the library grows. They improve their fitness in that environment because they're learning. They're adding things to their toolbox. Okay, Bitcoin's the same way. What happens if there's a bug in the software or some vulnerability is observed? Information travels through the Bitcoin network, peer to peer, on a message board, on Twitter. The mushroom scientists or developers, they come up with a new software patch or enzyme. They update the system, the nodes update, Bitcoin learns, right? So not like us, but there is some sort of simulated learning here. It adapts to its environment, it upgrades itself. And so it appears to be a living organism in that sense. Now, that's the micro scale. If we go to the macro scale, it's also systemically anti-fragile. This is very important. Um, let's do a parallel between fiat and Bitcoin, or inorganic systems and organic systems, or monocrops versus old growth forests, or centrally planned versus market based. Right? Those are our axis. So let's take the big Mike banana for example. I think this was in the 50s. Like 80% of the banana exports were a single organism. They're all brothers and sisters of one DNA. Okay, they did this for convenience, right? These centrally planned systems are hyper efficient, low cost bananas, super, same process everywhere you go, repeat it, ship them all over, make a bunch of money. Enter the Fusarium, an enterprising young fungus discovered a way to consume this banana. What happened over the next couple of years? We lost the Big Mike banana, decimated the entire world's crops, massive food shortages because 80% of the banana exports are gone in a couple of years. Okay, the parallel here is fiat money. Hyper efficient, easy to change because you have God mode, right? It's efficient until it's not. And what that gives you is short-term price stability. The dollar's not going down 10% in a day, even though Bitcoin does, right? But what you give up is systemic stability. So anytime you meddle with the currency, anytime you change interest rates or you make a new policy or more trade policy or this or that, you're essentially hiding risk. So in '08, banks blow up. Rather than make the banks pay the cost, we socialize the costs on Main Street. You and I paid the bills, right? That is a moral hazard that's embedded in our existing monetary system. So short-term stability, true. Long-term instability, that's fiat, that's the monocrop, that's the Big Mike. Now you look at the other side of the equation, Bitcoin, organic systems, old growth rainforests. This is defined by fierce competition. Think of an old growth forest. Everything is competing for its life. It's the most competitive place in the world. And what does that do? No one bacteria could take out a rainforest. You wouldn't even notice it. 1,000 new bacteria couldn't take out a rainforest because there's so much diversity and they have to compete. And so there's incremental growth, fierce competition, sustainable, anti-fragile, right? Now, Bitcoin is obviously the analog here. Bitcoin accepts the short-term price volatility. Bitcoin price is volatile. And we can't react to that. There's nothing the Bitcoin network could do to remove volatility. That's just a function of humans buying and selling. So we have to accept that. But what we get is no moral hazard. Because you can't bail out the banks, because you can't bail out the Bitcoin network, all the risk that builds up in the system gets realized. People have to pay the cost of that risk. If a Bitcoin bank blew up, no one's bailing out the Bitcoin bank. People pay the cost. That creates incentives to be more careful, and it creates an ecosystem that's much more anti-fragile. So on the long term, the systemic risk that builds up, which leads to these mega crashes, never builds up. So what that looks like on a chart is our economics goes like this, and then we blow off, and then we go down. Everyone gets hurt, loses all their money. Then we build it all up again, and we do it again. And in a Bitcoin term, it would be more like there would still be volatility, but it'll be a less magnitude on the curve. And that's a massive.
Isn't Bitcoin volatility like off the charts?
Historically, yes, with the caveat being since the ETF was launched, the last year or two of Bitcoin has been historically not volatile, whereas like tech stocks are way more volatile than Bitcoin over the last year or two.
But the Bitcoin price, even with the launch of the ETF, I mean, we're at the peak of its value, and the extent of its peak seems to be about the same as the extent of the last peak, and so it's hard to tell. Like, we're literally in a moment right now where if people universally are convinced that this asset is only going to go up for the rest of time, then we might actually escape the next crash. But if people don't, and they freak out because it's so expensive and they sell, then we're just going to repeat the cycle. So I'm like, I think that it is possible, if it becomes accepted that it's just something that doesn't crash, that it may not have that kind of volatility. But to say that it doesn't have volatility right now seems to not fit the data.
Historically low volatility since the ETF. So ETFs announced we hit 100K. And since then, we've gone from 100 to 125, essentially in that range for like a year. And so
But Bitcoin's been around since 2009?
Correct. Yeah, historically, it's very volatile.
Okay, just making sure.
Volatility is also a function of size and what is the market structure. So the bigger the asset, the more money it takes to move the price around. So volatility naturally goes down. And now with ETFs and essentially the Trump administration blessing Bitcoin, a whole bunch of new market participants all of a sudden come out and they're like, hey, we're comfortable now, so we're going to start participating. So governments are buying it, central banks are buying it, corporations are buying it, all the banks are anyone who understands what it is buying it. And we're just getting larger and larger types of buyers, and they have a different approach, right? Institutions don't buy and sell on a whim. They're much more methodical, and that does take some of the volatility out. Mom and pop, we freak out, we don't know we own, we buy the top, we sell the bottom. But institutions are more sophisticated. But not to get lost in the point, it's still volatile. It'll still be volatile in the future, probably more than a dollar would. But again, you trade off that short-term volatility so you don't have these mega crashes all the time. That's the key to land there.
Right
Couple
on.
nodding heads. Go ahead.
I'm not necessarily certain that the long form exploration of the specific ways in which the Bitcoin system mirrors the fungal system is the best use of the time that we have remaining. I think that maybe we should zoom out a little bit, and we should actually talk about the implications of it. So let's say that this is, because you've written about this, you have blog posts.
Yeah, why don't you tell people where's this article so that people can just go digest this on their own?
Yeah, BrandonQuittem.com.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
And so, because I think that the point that you're making is interesting, and what we like to do is, if somebody has written a body of work and people who are listening can go find that, I think that might be a good place to send them. But for us here, it's like, okay, so if it is similar to an organic network, which I think it's reasonable, do you think that it is a separate life form that has its own desires and intentions and is emerging into something that is truly separate from the people that are a part of it? Because it sounds like that's kind of where you're headed to, is not the fact that it just has all these parallels, but that it actually does contain within itself some sort of greater seed.
Great question. So I wouldn't say that Bitcoin has an opinion. It has no bias, no opinion, no goals, no objectives. Its only objective is to run the software as the rules are written. And although we're like on the 29th version of the software or whatever, the principles are essentially the same. It's 99% the same as when Satoshi launched it. We're just tweaking the edges to extend functionality here, reduce the risk over there. And so from day one, the DNA, if you want to say, is intact. And that DNA has no opinion on things. But where we anthropomorphize here and where we start talking about where you were leading me there is that the positive externalities of this system do create impacts in the world, right? And you might say, I'm stealing this from a friend, but bits move atoms. Okay, so the digital world, what we do there, let's say with the mining part, there's an incentive to make money. So people go set up the computers, they flip bits, and that re-architects the atoms in the world, right? So it impacts the world physically, it impacts the world relative to other monetary technologies, that impacts the world. And so it does do things in the world, but it's not intentional and it's not aware of what it's doing. That's the
Sounds
human side, right? Because technologies are an interplay between man and machine.
Hmm.
And the machine, it's a symbiotic relationship from all the way back. As soon as you build a stirrup on your horse, you have an advantage. Okay, all the knights in their armor, you couldn't beat them if you're a little peasant with a sword and no armor. But if you create a crossbow, now all of a sudden the peasant has an advantageous technology against the man in armor, right? And so the machines we create, they go and then they recreate us, and then man changes from the machine, and then we go create new technology, and that symbiosis is the story forever. And Bitcoin is just an incredibly powerful tool, and to be
sounds
honest,
so,
we're discovering what it's useful for still, right? Like when I talk about the symbiosis with miners and the energy markets and the positive externalities, Satoshi wasn't aware of this. He didn't plan that. That was a happy little accident that created positive externalities. And if you go back 5 years in time, no one's talking about it. Maybe 10 years back. And so we're discovering how this impacts us. The bigger it gets, the more adoption, we'll discover new things about it, positive and negative, most likely.
it sounds to me like you are making an analogy. This is analogous to a living organism, but it is not a living organism. And it reminds me very much of discussions we've had about these large language models and artificial intelligence in general, where it's like maybe the word intelligence is too generous with these things. Maybe what it is it's this tool that we've, delegated some tasks to, and it can mimic something we do. And it is analogous to intelligence in some ways, just like this blockchain, what do we call this? Money? This blockchain money stuff is analogous to a fungus, but it's not alive in and of itself, that it doesn't have intentions that it's exercising. Because I certainly don't feel that from the LLMs either.
Yeah, I
I
think
think that's
that
fair.
I think that the argument, Brendan, that you're making that's really powerful is that what you said about the knights versus the peasants and the difficulty of competing with somebody that's seated on a horse and covered in armor requires some kind of technological advancement. And I think that this is also what Shiloh was rightfully so excited about, which is that we do seem to be living through a period of time where things seem locked into an old world. And they're locked into an old world where the assets and the wealth are owned by a very small number of people. And the question of, well, how do you go about redistributing that is almost impossible to contemplate.
And the institutions are all inverted, and it's just a sea of lies, and you feel really betrayed the more you learn about all of these, like, we're all fighting for freedom and democracy and like all this crap, and you're like, wait, no, you're not. Like, you're doing insider trading in Congress, and I don't know. It just people are looking for alternatives.
Exactly. And I think that those alternatives are really hard to come by. And I think that that is something that's really exciting about Bitcoin and blockchain and all of these other technologies, which is that even if they haven't matured yet into their final form, it's the same thing as happened in the 90s with the dot-com boom. These are things that absolutely changed our lives in a way that we cannot go back from. The promise of what started in the 90s took 20 years longer to manifest than people expected, but it still did manifest. And we're living through it right now. And so when we talk about Bitcoin, I'm kind of looking at it in the same way, where it's like there's a ton of stuff that is happening in this space right now that leads one to believe that it is the future because it's the only thing that's weird and strange and paradigm shifting.
And potentially viable.
And potentially viable.
As long as Satoshi isn't a CIA agent who pops out of nowhere and steals all the money back once all the dissenters go over to it.
I think that I guess if there's some kind of crazy backdoor in it, right? But if there's, assuming that that's not the case.
It's technically possible. In the laws of physics, it's possible. But we've reviewed the code with millions of people, and if there was a vulnerability, I think it would have been exploited by now.
And I appreciate the way that you're looking at this in the sense of there being these patterns in the world of things that are effective. And I think that the analogy that you're making between the organization of mushrooms and the organization of Bitcoin is that, look, we have this life form that does something crazy that nobody else does. And we can study it, and we can look at the way that it interacts and the way that it supports this completely alternative way of life to the one that we have. Like you talked about this, Toby Kears, the researcher who studies the mycelium, and who is by political affiliation personally socialist, but is horrified to discover that there's basically market economies inside the mycelium. And that's informative, because when you realize that there's that frame by which you can look at nature and you can study, what does an effective system look like? What does it do? How does it work? What are its rules? And then design the thing that you're trying to build off of these really timeless principles, that's pretty powerful.
I appreciate that. And to concede, I agree. I don't think Bitcoin is literally alive, but
I was really hoping that's where we were going to end up.
But properly to untangle that requires another 3 hours before what is alive, what's not. Like, no one agrees. It's a tricky one. So I call it a new type of life, a decentralized meta-organism that lives on the internet. It eats energy and produces hard money. But most of that is just a frame I like. It helps people grasp it. I think biology is intuitive relative to other ways to peer into Bitcoin. And so, yeah, some of this is me taking liberties. I'm anthropomorphizing the mushrooms countlessly. When I talk to actual mycologists, they're somewhat horrified of how I frame things because it's not always strictly accurate, or at least I'm taking some liberties. And so part of this is a package to understand the principles of Bitcoin in a way that people can digest. And I think
much like the mycelium digests its environment.
Now we're talking. The analogies just flow out. That's what I'm here for.
It's really funny because Shiloh, over the course of the last week, I've had several heated discussions about the value of analogies. Where it's one of these things that on some level it helps, and on another level it only helps to people that that aren't the professional mycologists, because the professional mycologists are like, hold on, wait a second, that's not exactly right. What are you talking about? And so it works to some degree because it's this loose frame that you can hang unfamiliar things on. And then, I mean,
analogies can, I'm swearing off of them for all of eternity, except for maybe in poetry or something. But when it comes to actually discussing concepts in a rational manner, I think they really, really, they can really derail. Bad things can happen.
And I think that we're like more disagreeable.
But poetry is valuable too.
Poetry is very valuable. I think that Shiloh and I just tend to be more disagreeable about these things than most people, because we're like, hold on a second. How true is that statement? To what degree can we pin that down and say that this is like 100% one-to-one, or is it some other overlapping principle that reveals some symmetry of nature but is being manifest in totally different ways? And so I think that we're perhaps a particularly disagreeable audience.
Well, I'll tell you one thing on that. Bitcoiners are like archetypal 99% disagreeable. We're the most disagreeable people on the planet. Go on Twitter. Bitcoin's boring and we don't have external enemies. We infight constantly. And so I think you guys fit the Bitcoin mold more than you know. You're seeking truth. You want to find real answers, and analogies annoy you because they're not strictly true and you want to get to the bottom of things. This is that like seeker side. That is what's embedded into the early Bitcoin community. Chicken or egg, those people are probably predisposed to this new thing. So it's not exactly clear. One more point on analogies, though. It depends on the venue. If you want to get to rock bottom truth, throw out all analogies. If you're communicating complex things to someone and you just need to get a principle across, amazing tool.
Absolutely.
But obviously, the map is not the territory. So, caveat emptor. One more point, though. Are you familiar with Consilience?
The Consilience project or
The concept?
the concept of Consilience?
Yeah, popularized by biologist E.O. Wilson, but someone else came up with it. It's essentially that if multiple different disciplines agree on one thing, you come at it from chemistry, biology, and physics, and they all show the same thing, your confidence in that thing should go up. Right? And so that's really the principle I'm using here. I don't want to say Bitcoin's alive or not. I don't care. That's fun. Right? But from a consilience perspective, if Mycology has an archetype, centralized network archetype, and Bitcoin follows the same archetype, that gives me more confidence that the archetype of Bitcoin is sound. Doesn't mean it is, but the more ways you look at a thing and they all point to the same thing, our confidence should go up. Right.
I like
And
that a lot.
that's how you find universal truth if everything points to the same thing. If one answer is harmonious across all disciplines, that's pretty darn good. But if the string theory nerds think it's true and every other discipline proves it wrong, that's not a very good conclusion, right?
And I think that it's also something that lets you, I don't want to say see the future, but gives you access to like reading a landscape more accurately, right? Because if you can understand the way that these foundational principles operate in different spaces, and you recognize certain rules that ensure success across different domains, and then you notice that some domain that you're looking at isn't doing that thing that is required for success everywhere else, then you can probably safely say that you have a decent read on it that nobody else does have.
It's
And
a
I'm-
good model, right?
Yeah.
And it's like when people were trying to invent airplanes, they spent a long time trying to build bird-like contraptions, right? And it turns out that recreating what a bird does is not the most efficient path to the Concorde or whatever.
Birds don't have turbines?
I don't think so. I've never studied birds before.
Birds aren't real, are they?
They don't
That's
have
what I've
propellers,
heard.
I don't think. I've never seen a propeller on a bird. But like, so you can learn a lot from these analogy or from analogous systems and natural systems. I do think there's tons of value in that. But you also got to be careful because there's plenty of dudes who jumped off cliffs with wings strapped to their arms, and that was the last time anybody ever heard from them.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. This is a good place to put a pin in it, though. I'd be down to keep talking to you about life and stuff. I think we should. I hope this isn't the last time we get to hang out.
Yeah, I'm sure a week from now I'll have more Bitcoin questions to annoy you with.
Not too.
Send them over. I've been a Bitcoin Sherpa for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I really should have a Google Doc with like the top 20 questions in like bullet format. Maybe I'll create that after this.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, man, it's been really fun to talk to you. You're a really interesting dude, and I think I can honestly say this is the first time I've understood the entire operation, and I have talked to a number of people who are invested in this stuff, and I usually, I don't know, either they get bored or I just can't.
I think that everybody just has a slightly different level of understanding of it, and so you start to ask these questions about slightly deeper, more technical things, and they putter out.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you want the technical side, I can hand you off to someone way more capable. I'm good at understanding enough of the technical side, but my skill is really translating that so it's understood.
I would love to talk to somebody who's super technical.
I think we're ready for second grade at this point.
You guys are definitely ready. And before I forget, I dropped a note in the chat on healthcare. You had a couple jabs to healthcare. Fully agree. There is a competitor called Crowd Health. Okay, it's 6 years old. There's 15,000 people using it. It's not insurance, but it serves the same function as insurance. Okay. I'll give you the hard costs and then explain how it works if you have a minute. Right now, it's about under $200 maximum per person per month. And if you have a claim, I go to the doctor and I broke my leg, you pay $500 for that event. So if I broke my leg, I got it diagnosed, I got an x-ray, I got a surgery, and I got PT. That's one $500 cost out of pocket. And the crowd, so the other 14,900 people, they all contribute to your bill through that $200 a month fee. And they show every single claim ever shown. And let's say the month prior, there weren't too many claims. Your $200 might become $100 or $150. And so they essentially just pay ahead. And then they have a whole team of people who fight on your behalf on the phone and say, hey, doctor, we're not paying that. We're paying out of pocket. Give me the real price. And so the actual dollars given back is closer to like 50, 20, 30, sometimes 25% of what your insurance would pay for the same treatment.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it's a space where people are trying to figure stuff out, and that's what I love about it.
Honestly, that's what the world needs more than ever right now is alternatives, right? I'm so sick of people just complaining about how fucked everything is because it's obviously fucked. And so anybody who's working on alternative solutions has my ear as far as...
You sound like a Bitcoiner. The real Bitcoin story, by the way, is capital allocators change. Currently, the old world, it's a bunch of people who lied, cheat, and stealed and buddied up to the money printer and played political games to have some advantage, and then they monetize it. In a Bitcoin world, you're going to have like millions of internet weirdos with divergent views that seek truth, that have a different perspective, and who earned it. You might not think investing in things is earning it, but you took a risk, you saw the future, you held on, you were rewarded. So let's say Bitcoin succeeds. You have a bunch of rich Bitcoiners. What are they going to do? They're already homeschooling, they're building new schools, they're building new health. Everything is going to change because Bitcoiners want to improve the world. If you have a shitload of money, you start having tons of babies and you want to make their life better. And what are you going to do with that money? Go hide out in the woods and, live out the times, or are you going to improve your local community? Obviously, some will hide in the woods, but the real energy is new capital allocators changing the world. And so I expect all these things to be redone with a lot of force behind them by extremely talented people from all walks of life. And that's something to be very optimistic about. The other thing is Bitcoiners are optimistic. We're reproducing, we're building things, we're not lost in the whining about the institutions because we have a way to channel all that energy into something productive. So it genuinely improves people's lives. They get fit, they start eating better, they stop drinking, they get married, they have kids. Like all the pro-social things that make civilization go is re-emerging in this Bitcoin community. And all political spectrums often gets lumped on the right, but there's a massive contingent of lefty Bitcoiners.
I'm interested, man. I think you got some. Yeah, I think you're onto something. I'll experiment with $5.
Yeah, just get Cash App and buy whatever you want on your phone right now. It's super easy.
I'm gonna get the steel plates that I bury in my backyard.
Yeah, we can get the steel plates too. We have some Bitcoin. We just don't have a lot of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brennan, listen, man. We got to edit a bunch of podcasts. Honestly, we got to let you go.
But, we got work to do.
Yeah, we got work to do still today before dinner time. So
I love your setup, by the way. The lighting and the dark and the plants.
Oh,
super rad.
Yeah, we're always tweaking it. It's a quasi alive operation.
It's a labor of love.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Let's just if it's all right with you, let's maybe talk again in a few months.
Yeah, or whenever you have time.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. And then send us the name of the great 2 technical guy.
Yeah, I'm going to think about the right person. Do you want someone who's like autistic and pedantic and gets it all out in like a belabored way? Or do you want someone that's has a little more pizzazz, but also has the technical chops?
I prefer the autists.
I think we're not ready to go. I mean, maybe at some point, But
You
I
want
think
the
we should go to
pizzazz?
second grade
Okay,
before we
all
go
right.
to, do our PhD dissertation or something.
We embrace the tism in Bitcoin. If you go to the meetup, you'll
Honestly,
see.
we
I'm
could
like-
do either one.
I'm like,
whatever
give
you-
me an autist
yeah.
any day of the week. They're gonna know everything backwards and forwards. So they're like, I need the special interest Bitcoin autist who's
There you
just gone super deep.
The podcast will not perform as well, but you two will probably benefit from that in a way. That's
Well,
what I would-
I'm happy to do both.
Okay.
Nasty will probably benefit. She's got more horsepower than me with this stuff for some reason. I need second grade first. I'm sticking to my guns.
I think you guys have a great dynamic. I think it's hilarious. Although I admire you guys in a relationship to do a podcast. I don't think that would work with my wife and I.
We're always joking about the fact that we play nice on camera. Shiloh and I have very heated autistic fights about basically everything. Some of our most intense fights have been about the nature of like the electron and how photons work and
That's awesome.
Everybody needs something, I guess.
Which podcast of yours should I listen to based on what you know about me?
Ooh, good
Michael
question.
Levin.
Yeah.
Michael Levin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did a conversation with him like maybe a month ago. It's like an hour long. I think you'd really enjoy it.
Yeah, we've had him on a few times, but the most recent one is short and snappy, and it concerns ideas that will cross pollinate with you. Well, I almost brought him up several times, but I didn't want to slow your roll.
Where
So,
biology goes off the rails?
there you go.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah. I love breaking down
I
this
think you would
stuff.
dig that. And then in a month or so, we're gonna have this debate between the MMT and the Austrian economists. I think you'd enjoy that one
Who's
too.
your Austrian?
Bob Murphy,
That's a good choice. Who's the MMT?
Steve Keen.
Yeah, those are big ones. Nice.
So that'll be good.
I guess Michael Hudson is in the wings somewhere. I know that Keen's been talking to him about it, but I don't know. He won't come back because our transcripts aren't good enough.
Let him go.
Not worthy.
No worthy.
I got to get up for family mode. Appreciate all the time today.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon.
Have a good night, man.
See you
Shout
around.
anytime. Awesome.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye, folks.